The airport was a screaming void of chaos, and I was drowning in it. My flight to Seattle, my one shot at a fresh start, had been canceled, leaving me stranded in Chicago O'Hare with a dead phone, a drained bank account, and a heart still raw from a breakup that had gutted me. At 24, I thought I'd hit rock bottom, but the universe seemed determined to prove me wrong. I slumped against a cold metal bench in Terminal 3, surrounded by the clamor of rolling suitcases and hurried goodbyes. My name is Elias Torres, and I'd come to Chicago chasing a dream that didn't pan out. A music internship that promised stardom but delivered rejection. Now, with no money for a hotel and no way to get home to Portland, I was stuck, invisible in a sea of strangers. The weight of it all pressed down, my chest tight with the kind of loneliness that makes you feel like you're disappearing. Then I saw him. Across the crowded terminal, a guy about my age was weaving through the chaos, his dark eyes scanning the departure boards with a quiet intensity. He was maybe 5 feet 9 inches, with neatly styled black hair and a navy sweater that looked too soft for a place as harsh as this airport. He carried a small bouquet of wildflowers, the kind you'd pick from a roadside, not buy in a shop. Something about him, maybe the way he moved, deliberate but not rushed, made my breath catch. I didn't know why I couldn't look away. "Excuse me," he said, his voice cutting through the noise as he approached. "You okay? You've been staring at that canceled flight board like it owes you money." His tone was light, but his eyes held a flicker of concern, like he could see the cracks I was trying to hide. I blinked, caught off guard. Yeah, just stranded. No big deal." My voice sounded hollow even to me. He tilted his head, studying me. "I'm Kai Nakamura, and you don't look like no big deal is your vibe right now." He sat down uninvited, leaving just enough space between us on the bench to feel safe but close. "What's your name?" "Elias," I mumbled, unsure why I was even answering. Maybe it was the flowers or the way he didn't push, just waited like he had all the time in the world. "Elias," he repeated like he was testing how it felt to say it. "Well, Elias, I'm also stuck here until morning. My flight to Denver got axed. Want to be stranded together? Misery loves company, right?" I laughed, a small, broken sound. "I'm not great company right now." "Neither am I," he said, grinning. "But I've got these flowers and half a granola bar. We could make it work." Against my better judgment, I nodded. Something about Kai felt like a lifeline, and I was too tired to question it. We shared the granola bar, sitting there as the terminal's fluorescent lights buzzed overhead. He told me he was 25, a graphic designer heading to a conference in Denver, though he seemed more excited about the wildflowers he'd picked on a whim during a layover in Minneapolis. "There for nobody," he said, shrugging. "Just thought they'd make someone's day better." I didn't know it then, but those flowers were the start of something. Kai wasn't just a stranger passing through. He was the kind of person who could make you feel seen, even when you were at your lowest. As we talked, the airport's chaos faded, and for the first time in months, I didn't feel so alone. We wandered the terminal, trading stories. I told him about the internship that had fallen apart, how I'd moved to Chicago with big dreams only to crash hard. He listened, really listened, his eyes never leaving mine. In return, he shared how he'd grown up in a small town in Colorado, where being openly gay wasn't exactly easy. "I left because I wanted to find people who got me," he said, his voice soft but steady. "Still looking, I guess." There was a pause, heavy with unspoken things. I wanted to say I got him, that I knew what it was like to feel out of place, but the words stuck in my throat. Instead, I pointed at a flickering neon sign for a 24-hour diner across the terminal. "Want to grab some terrible airport food?" I asked. "Only if you're paying," he teased, though we both knew neither of us had much to spare. The diner was a greasy spoon tucked between a newsstand and a gate to nowhere. We slid into a booth, the vinyl seats creaking under us. Over stale coffee and overpriced fries, Kai told me about his art, how he poured his feelings into designs because words sometimes failed him. I admitted I'd been writing songs no one would ever hear, too scared to share them after the internship disaster. "You should play one," he said, leaning forward, his eyes bright with curiosity. "Here? In an airport diner?" I laughed, but my heart was racing. "Why not? No one's listening. Except me." I hesitated, then pulled out my phone, which had just enough charge to play a rough demo I'd recorded months ago. It was a quiet ballad, raw and aching, about losing yourself in someone else's shadow. As the song played, Kai closed his eyes, his fingers tracing the edge of his coffee mug. When it ended, he looked at me like he'd seen something new. "That was beautiful," he said, his voice barely above a whisper. "You're not just good, Elias. You're real." My face burned, and I looked away, but his words sank deep. For the first time in forever, I felt like someone saw me. Not the failure, not the guy who'd lost everything, but me, the real me. We stayed in that diner for hours, the world shrinking to just us. The terminal outside was a blur of motion, but inside, time slowed. Kai's laugh was warm, his stories vivid, and every time our hands brushed reaching for the salt shaker or the check, my pulse jumped. I didn't know what this was. Friendship, something more, but it felt like a spark in the dark. By the time the diner's clock hit 2 a.m., the exhaustion was creeping in, but neither of us wanted to leave. Kai leaned back, his scarf slipping to reveal a small tattoo on his collarbone. A tiny bird in flight. "Freedom," he said when he caught me staring. "Got it when I left home. Reminds me I can always start over." I wanted to ask more, but a yawn cut me off. Kai grinned. "Come on, let's find somewhere to crash. We've got hours before our flights." We found a quiet corner near a gate, dragging our bags to form a makeshift barricade. Kai offered me his scarf as a pillow, and I hesitated before taking it, the soft wool smelling faintly of cedar and him. As we lay there, the airport's hum fading into the background, I realized I hadn't thought about my ex or the internship in hours. All I could think about was Kai, his voice, his eyes, the way he made this cold, sterile place feel like it could be home. The airport floor was hard, but Kai's scarf under my head made it bearable. I woke to the soft glow of dawn filtering through the terminal's massive windows, Kai's quiet breathing beside me. He was curled up, his sweater bunched around him, the wildflowers tucked safely in his bag. For a moment, I just watched him, my heart doing something unfamiliar, something warm and terrifying. I wasn't supposed to feel this way, not after Dylan, my ex, who'd promised forever and then left me with nothing but a note on the fridge. I can't do this anymore. But Kai was different. He didn't push or demand. He just was, and that scared me more than anything. He stirred, blinking awake. "Morning, stranded boy," he said, his voice rough with sleep. "You snore, by the way." "I do not." I shot back, but I was smiling. Felt strange, like a muscle I hadn't used in months. We grabbed breakfast at a coffee cart, splitting a stale bagel and 2 black coffees. The terminal was waking up, travelers rushing past, but Kai and I were in our own bubble. He told me about his childhood, how he'd spent summers sketching in the mountains, hiding who he was from a town that didn't understand. I shared how music had been my escape growing up in Portland, where my parents' expectations clashed with my dreams. "You ever think about just going for it?" he asked, sipping his coffee. "Putting your songs out there, no matter what?" I shrugged, the old fear creeping in. "What if they're not good enough?" "They are," he said like it was a fact. "I heard you last night. You've got something to say, Elias. Don't let anyone take that from you." His words hit hard, cracking open a part of me I'd kept locked away. I wanted to believe him, but doubt was a heavy thing. Still, the way he looked at me, like he saw something worth believing in, made me want to try. We spent the morning exploring the airport, turning our stranding into an adventure. Kai had a knack for finding beauty in the mundane. A mural hidden behind a vending machine, a janitor's cart decorated with stickers. He pulled out a sketchbook and started drawing, his pencil flying over the page. When he showed me the sketch, a quick study of my face, all sharp lines and soft shadows, I felt exposed but safe. "You're good at this," I said, my voice catching. "You're easy to draw," he replied, his eyes meeting mine. There it was again, that spark, electric and undeniable. By noon, the departure boards updated. My flight to Seattle was rescheduled for 3 p.m., Kai's to Denver at 4. The reality of parting hit like a punch. We'd only known each other for hours, but it felt like years. I didn't want to say goodbye, not yet. "Let's make a deal," Kai said, his tone serious. "We stick together until one of us has to board. No moping, just us." "Deal," I said, my throat tight. We found a quiet lounge area, claiming a couch near a window overlooking the tarmac. Kai pulled out his wildflowers, arranging them on the table between us. "For luck," he said, handing me one. It was a small daisy, fragile but stubborn, like it had fought to grow somewhere it wasn't supposed to. I tucked it into my jacket pocket, my fingers brushing his. Neither of us pulled away. For a moment we just sat there, hands touching, the world outside fading. I wanted to freeze time to keep this feeling safe, seen, alive. But the airport had other plans. A voice crackled over the intercom, announcing my flight's boarding. My stomach dropped. Kai's hand tightened around mine, just for a second, before he let go. "We should head to your gate," he said, his voice steady but his eyes betraying him. We walked in silence, the terminal's noise swallowing us. At gate 17, I turned to him, my bag heavy on my shoulder. "Kai, don't," he interrupted, smiling softly. "Don't say goodbye. Say see you soon." "See you soon," I echoed, though we both knew it was a long shot. He lived in Colorado, I was headed to Seattle, and life wasn't a movie where strangers meet and everything just works out. He handed me the rest of the wildflowers. "Keep these, and keep writing, Elias. Promise me." "I promise," I said, my voice breaking. As I boarded, I looked back. Kai was still there, waving, his smile bittersweet. I clutched the flowers, my heart a mess of hope and ache. The plane took off, and Chicago disappeared below. But Kai stayed with me, a stranger who'd changed everything in one night. Seattle was supposed to be my fresh start, but it felt hollow without Kai. I landed at Seattle-Tacoma, the wildflowers still tucked in my pocket, their petals wilting but holding on. At 24, I was starting over in a city where I knew no one, with a temp job at a coffee shop and a tiny apartment that smelled like damp carpet. But Kai's words, "You've got something to say, Elias," echoed in my head, pushing me to keep going. I tried to settle in. The coffee shop gig was grueling, but it paid the rent. At night, I'd sit on my thrift store couch, strumming my guitar, writing songs about airports and strangers and moments that felt too big for words. The daisy from Kai sat in a glass of water on my windowsill, a reminder of that night. I didn't have his number, no way to reach him, but I couldn't shake the feeling that our story wasn't over. Weeks passed, and Seattle's rain became my soundtrack. I started posting snippets of my songs online, hesitantly at first, Kai's encouragement giving me the courage. To my shock, people listened. Comments trickled in, "This hits hard, keep going." One night, a local open mic night caught my eye. I signed up, my stomach in knots, but I could almost hear Kai saying, "Don't let anyone take that from you." The open mic was in a cramped bar in Capitol Hill, all exposed brick and dim lights. I played my ballad from the airport diner, my voice shaking but steadying as I sang. The crowd was small but attentive, and when I finished, the applause felt like a lifeline. A woman named Mara, a local music promoter, approached me after. "You've got something special," she said, handing me her card. "Let's talk." I walked home buzzing, the daisy in my pocket like a talisman. Mara's offer wasn't a record deal, but it was a start. Gigs at local venues, a chance to be heard. For the first time since Chicago, I felt like I was moving forward. But every step forward came with a pang of longing. I wanted to tell Kai, to see his smile, to know if he was okay. One night, scrolling through social media, I saw it. A post from a Denver art gallery showcasing new artists. There, in the background of a photo, was Kai, his sketchbook open, his face lit with that quiet intensity one remembered. My heart stopped. I clicked through, finding his portfolio online. His designs were vibrant, full of life, just like him. There was no contact info, but the gallery's address was listed. I didn't think. I just acted. I booked a cheap flight to Denver for the next weekend, using every cent I'd saved from the coffee shop. I told myself it was crazy, that I was chasing a ghost, but the thought of seeing Kai again was too strong to ignore. I packed light, just my guitar and the wilting flowers, and boarded the plane, my nerves electric. Denver's airport was smaller than Chicago's, but it felt just as chaotic. I took a bus to the gallery, my heart pounding as I walked through the doors. The space was bright, filled with bold colors and soft chatter. And there he was, Kai, standing by a wall of sketches, talking to a small crowd. He looked the same but different, his hair a little longer, his sweater swapped for a flannel shirt. I froze, suddenly unsure. What if he didn't remember me? What if that night had meant more to me than to him? But then he turned and his eyes met mine. His face lit up, that same gentle smile spreading wide. "Elias?" he said, crossing the room in 3 strides. "What are you doing here?" "I saw your work online," I stammered, clutching my guitar case. "I had to find you." He laughed, a sound that warmed the whole room. "You're insane. I love it." We stepped outside, the Denver air crisp and cool. He told me about the gallery show, how he'd been pouring himself into his art since Chicago. I told him about Seattle, the open mic, the songs I'd been writing. His eyes lit up when I mentioned the music, and he grabbed my hand, pulling me to a nearby park. "Play for me," he said, sitting on a bench under a towering oak. I hesitated, but his gaze was steady, encouraging. I pulled out my guitar and played a new song, one I'd written about him, about airports and wildflowers and moments that change you. When I finished, he was quiet, his eyes shining. "That was for me," he said, not a question. "Yeah," I admitted, my face burning. "It was." He reached out, his hand finding mine. "I haven't stopped thinking about you, Elias. That night, it meant something." My heart raced. "Me too." We sat there, hands entwined, the world fading away again. Denver felt like Chicago, like we'd picked up right where we left off. But this time we exchanged numbers, promising to stay in touch. As I boarded my flight back to Seattle, I felt lighter, like I'd found something I didn't know I was searching for. Back in Seattle, Kai and I texted constantly. His messages were a mix of goofy sketches and late-night thoughts, each one pulling me closer. At 24, I'd never felt this kind of connection. Not with Dylan, not with anyone. Kai was thousands of miles away, but he felt closer than anyone in my city. My music was taking off. Mara booked me for more gigs, and I started drawing small crowds. Each performance felt like a step toward something bigger, but also a step toward Kai. I sent him recordings, and he'd reply with drawings inspired by my songs, wildflowers woven into abstract designs, a silhouette of two figures in an airport. One night he called, his voice soft through the phone. "I'm coming to Seattle," he said. "Next month. There's an art collab I got invited to. You in?" "Yes," I said, too fast, my heart racing. "I mean, yeah, cool." He laughed. Smooth, Elias. The weeks before his visit were a blur of nerves and excitement. I cleaned my tiny apartment, bought new strings for my guitar, and tried not to overthink. When the day came, I met him at Seattle-Tacoma, my hands shaking as I scanned the arrival's gate. He appeared, carrying the same beat-up bag from Chicago, his smile brighter than I remembered. "Miss me?" he asked, pulling me into a hug. He smelled like cedar and paint, and I didn't want to let go. We spent the day wandering Seattle, Pike Place Market, the waterfront, a hole-in-the-wall taco joint. Kai was all energy, sketching everything, from the fishmongers to the ferries. At one point he stopped to draw me, my guitar slung over my shoulder, the Space Needle in the background. "You're my favorite subject," he said, his eyes locking with mine. That night, I took him to an open mic at the bar where I'd first played. I was on the lineup and Kai sat in the front row, his wildflowers, fresh ones this time, on the table. I played a new song, one I hadn't shared with him yet. It was raw, about longing and distance and finding someone who makes the world make sense. When I finished, the crowd cheered, but I only saw Kai, his eyes shining with tears. After, we walked to a quiet pier, the city lights reflecting on the water. He took my hand, his fingers warm against the night's chill. "Elias, I need to tell you something," he said, his voice steady but nervous. "I'm falling for you, hard, and it scares the hell out of me." My breath caught. I felt it too, but hearing it out loud made it real. "I'm scared too," I admitted. "But I'm falling for you, Kai. I have been since Chicago." He smiled, pulling me close. Our first kiss was soft, tentative, but it felt like coming home. The water lapped against the pier, and for a moment, everything was perfect. But life isn't a song. Kai's visit was only a week, and Denver was still his home. We spent every second together, but the countdown to his flight loomed. On his last day, we sat in my apartment, the daisy from Chicago now pressed in a book on my shelf. "What do we do now?" I asked, my voice small. "We make it work," he said, his hand finding mine. "Long distance isn't easy, but you're worth it." I wanted to believe him, but doubt crept in. I'd been burned before. Still, I nodded, clinging to the hope that this time, love could be enough. Kai left, and the silence in my apartment was deafening. We texted, called, sent songs and sketches, but the distance felt like a wall. My gigs kept me busy, and Mara hinted at a possible tour with other local artists. It was everything I dreamed of, but it meant more time away from Kai. One night he called, his voice heavy. "Elias, there's a job offer in San Francisco. Bigger gallery, better pay. But it's further from you." My heart sank. "What did you say?" "I haven't decided," he said. "I want us to figure this out together." I didn't know what to say. The idea of him moving further away hurt, but I couldn't ask him to give up his dreams. Not when he'd believed in mine so fiercely. We talked for hours, weighing options, but no answer felt right. The next week, I got a call from Mara. The tour was confirmed. 6 cities, 3 months. It was my shot, but it meant being on the road, far from Kai. I told him, expecting him to pull back, but he just said, "Go for it, Elias. I'll be cheering you on." His support broke something in me. I wanted him with me, not just cheering from afar. But I said yes to the tour, hoping it wouldn't break us. The tour was a whirlwind, 6 cities, dive bars, and small venues packed with people who actually listened. At 24, I was living my dream, but every night, I'd call Kai, his voice grounding me. He'd taken the San Francisco job, and the distance between us grew, but so did our determination. We sent each other pieces of our lives. My songs, his sketches, photos of wildflowers he found in Golden Gate Park. Long distance was hard. Time zones messed with our calls, and jealousy crept in when I saw his Instagram filled with new friends. But we fought for it, planning visits when we could. 3 months into the tour, I had a break and flew to San Francisco. Kai met me at the airport, his arms open, and for a weekend, the distance didn't exist. We walked the city, from the foggy cliffs of Ocean Beach to the vibrant Mission District. Kai's new life was full, his art was thriving, and he'd found a community that embraced him. I was happy for him, but a small part of me worried I'd lose him to this bigger world. On our last night, we sat on his apartment's fire escape, the city sprawling below. "Elias," he said, his voice serious, "I want you here, with me. After your tour, what if you moved to San Francisco?" I froze. Seattle was home now, my music tied to its scene. But Kai was my heart. "What about my gigs?" I asked. "You'd find new ones," he said. "You're too good not to. And I'd be here, every step." It was a lot, too much maybe, but the idea of building a life with him felt right. I didn't say yes, not yet, but I promised to think about it. The tour ended, and I went back to Seattle, my head spinning. Mara offered me a residency at a local venue, a steady gig that could anchor me. But Kai's offer pulled harder. I spent nights writing songs about choices, about love that asks you to leap. One night I called him, my decision clear. "I'm coming to San Francisco," I said. "I want us." He laughed, a sound of pure joy. "I'm ready." Moving was chaos. Packing my life into boxes, saying goodbye to Seattle's rain. But when I landed in San Francisco, Kai was there, wildflowers in hand. We found a tiny apartment, barely big enough for my guitar and his sketchbooks, but it was ours. I got gigs in local bars, and Kai's art started selling. We built a life, messy and imperfect, but ours. One evening, a year after Chicago, we went back to the airport where it all started, San Francisco Airport, not O'Hare, but close enough. We stood in the terminal, holding hands, watching planes take off. "You changed my whole trip," I said, echoing the night we met. "You changed my whole life," he replied, kissing me softly. We weren't perfect. We fought, we doubted, we stumbled. But we chose each other, over and over, through distance and fear and dreams that pulled us in different directions. That night in Chicago, I was stranded, lost in every way. Kai found me, and together we found our way home.